Okay, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are and whenever you are watching this. Just to give context, today is the afternoon of Tuesday, July 28th. We're back after a 2-week absence. I'd love to tell you it's because we've been busier than ever. Reality was
And
we just,
it's just summer vacation, guys. Matt's been taking some time off. I'm taking some time off. Summer is a nice, slow time in real estate to reflect on our thoughts and enjoy the summer sun.
well, we're hopeful to be very busy come fall, which I think is kind of the way we're looking at this right now. So we are back. We were going to go bi-weekly for the summertime anyways. So here we are. Hope everyone has been keeping well. Going to switch it up a bit this week. We actually are going to have our first guest on the podcast, video, chat room, whatever we're calling this. That'll be coming up here just in a few minutes. But Mike, why don't we just give a quick recap?
You have to tell them who it is, though. You got to build up the excitement. So, guys,
I was building the anticipation. I was building an anticipation by not telling, but we're going to be joined by.
You got to give something to hold on to here. We have coming the head of office leasing across Canada for JLL, and he's going to be able to tell us a lot of fun, interesting things about the apartments and the offices that are 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 10 weeks ahead of us in COVID, what they're seeing, what their office life is like across the country, so that us in Toronto have an idea of maybe where we're going in the next number of weeks.
Yeah, really important to understand it, particularly Vancouver, Calgary, and Edmonton, who are a few weeks ahead of us, just how they're seeing it, how their market's reacting. So thank you. That does build a lot of anticipation and pressure for when Brett joins us. Why don't we just quickly, before we get Brett on the line here, Mike, why don't we give a quick update on Toronto specifically, kind of where we are right now. So Toronto, for anyone who's maybe not familiar, has just gone into phase 3 of the COVID plan, which allows for more indoor activities, provided you are wearing a mask. Michael and I have been very fortunate, although we're both home today. We've both been very fortunate to actually have been in the offices over the last kind of 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I've only been in the office a couple of times, but Matt, you've been in the office quite a bit, and you're kind of making it part of at least part of your weekly routine, a couple of days a week. What's that been like for you? Is it, I know there's only a handful of people in there, but what's the feeling? Is it feeling more normal? Do you like being in there?
So great question. One, I mean, I love being back in the office. As you know, I'm someone who does 95% of my work normally from the office. That's my, I get it. It's just a desk. But for me, that's my safe space. That's home. That's where I'm most productive. That's where I'm used to just working, which is to say the last 4.5 months have been a big adjustment. So that part's been nice, Mike. In terms of how the office is, we are going to bring some content, whether it's later in this episode, probably next week's episode, how we've actually laid out our office, what it looks like. To answer your question, yeah, there's not a lot of people there right now. People are kind of coming and going as we see over the weeks. But have to give, a huge shout out to the landlords and other tenants across Toronto. The building's, it's really simple. I mean, I was, candidly, I was a little, I don't know what the proper word is, maybe intimidated on that first day back. You don't really know what you're going to be walking into. You don't know what to expect. Am I doing it right? Is there something I missed? Beautifully laid out from the time I pulled into the underground parking lot, directional signage, where to walk, where to stand in the elevators, hand sanitizer everywhere, quite literally how to walk in the hallways of a lobby.
Right.
And then once we got onto our floor,
for the elevator, where to stand exactly in the elevator.
Yeah. It took all that. We talked about it, that anxiety that people are facing and frustration that people are facing on their return to work, took all that out of it. So it's been really nice. In terms of being in the actual office, it's a little bit different. I think we can all, adjust to that, if you will. Obviously, the one, I think, takeaway, and maybe we'll talk with Brett about this a bit today. When this first hit, goodness, going back, can't believe it's been 4.5 months. It's just wild. But when this first hit, one of the initial conversations that started was, well, are people going to have to take on more space to adjust for COVID, to adjust for social distancing? Do we have to reconfigure our office right now? In terms of my client set, Mike, and I think yours is probably similar, we actually haven't seen anyone really do that. I think most people are just getting used to working.
I mean, yeah, you can't just move the furniture apart. I mean, there's cable drops and stuff like that. Like, you can't just move everything and continue on in your office.
Yeah, we're not actually advising that.
Right. But for some additional context in terms of how they're bringing us back. So Matt and I are both in client-facing roles, and JLL decided to let back first any of the revenue-generating groups. You're allowed to come to the office. They said put up a hand if you want. So there's a certain limited number of people in a certain limited number of teams that have the opportunity to come to the office first because they're the ones who theoretically need it the most. A lot of our back office staff will continue to work from home until there's an opportunity to bring them back. And over the phases, we'll bring more and more. So in terms of how do you staff the office for us without pushing us apart, it's every other desk and it's a limited population of people allowed there on a given time.
Yeah, and again, we're going to bring some video content on that. I think it'll give a much better understanding on next week's episode. I think the great thing is, and you and I have talked about it, it is just really nice to see your colleagues, to collaborate again, to chat, right? We're doing a ton of these Zoom calls. We're doing a ton of WebExes and Microsoft Teams meetings. And I think everyone's doing, at least on our team, a very good job of staying connected. And that's both our teams, that's with all my clients that we've talked to out there. Everyone feels like they're staying connected. You can't replicate that human interaction, which I think has been the major takeaway from COVID anyway. So,
so I was really lucky. I went for a drink with Alan and Oliver the other day. So our CEO and another one of the brokers, I happen to live very close to the office. We were working on finalizing a big pitch. And afterwards, Alan said, who wants to come grab a drink with me? And our CEO, one of the things he inherently really believes is those in-person meetings, those drinks after work, that builds culture, that builds relationships. And that's a big part of why we go to the office. So to be able to go down and have that in-person FaceTime is so critical. And if you ask me why there will always be some sort of office long-term, or where the office will go, is the opportunity to have those collisions so you can build relationships with your colleagues that you can't do over Zoom.
Well, it's culture at the end of the day, right? And I understand culture is a big buzzword that gets thrown around a lot. How you define culture is different for every single company, and that's why it's a big buzzword that gets thrown around a lot. But there's very few things that replicate building culture like an office, particularly if you want to create a corporate identity.
Matt, I think this related to our topic is, what's work like right now? We talk about the office as sparse, but even going out for a patio beer, actually pretty interestingly enough, in the financial core, is a lot of these restaurants have sprawled out onto their outdoor areas, and the landlords allowed them to do that. And it was actually pretty busy. I mean, it is the summer in Toronto, but it's like the people who are in the financial core and who are forced to come to work, they are taking advantage of those amenities in the area as best they can because, again, that FaceTime is so important. So it doesn't feel like a complete ghost town downtown, if you could.
No, particularly more now than ever. I've been fortunate. Actually, you and I met up with some colleagues just to have a patio beer and discuss and get caught up. I had a chance to do it with a few clients. Particularly now more than ever, that opportunity just to get together and see people and have that conversation outside of a Zoom has been fantastic. So with that said, why don't we go to a quick sponsor message on the podcast, and then when we come back, we'll be joined by Brett Elofson to talk a little bit more about what we're seeing across Canada.
Can't wait to find out.
Back at you in a minute. Okay, welcome back. You probably figured out we don't actually have a sponsor. If you're interested, please message either one of the two of us. We'd love the opportunity to have some sponsors. As discussed, we are very fortunate to be joined by Brett Elofson today. For those of you who don't know Brett, lover of the Toronto Raptors, lover of 1990s hip hop, but probably more importantly, and the reason he's with us today, he is the National Managing Director of Office Leasing across Canada at JLL. I don't want to say it, but one of the most important people in my life. So here he is. Welcome, Brett.
Hi, Matt. Thanks for having me. Hey, Mike. How you doing?
Thanks for coming on.
Good, Brett. So, Brett, tell us a little bit about what are you seeing coast to coast in terms of office? Context being Toronto, we're a little bit behind our friends out west. They're back in the offices. Are they busy? Are there a lot of groups there? What are they saying? And how does that compare to here in Toronto?
Yeah, good question, Mike. Every market's been a little unique in the sense there's been different things other than COVID affecting them. If we look at Alberta right now, we're actually having success on an office front to a certain degree. It's not the sort of success that you want to talk about because it's just so much rapid change. But where we have rapid change, we often do find opportunity. In Edmonton, it's very strong government backing, so they've been doing fairly well actually on an office front. Vancouver, they were not affected as hard as we were with the COVID-19 crisis. They got back to the office a little bit earlier than we did, and we did see a little bit of an uptick in opportunities. I will say consistently across the board, whether it's Vancouver, Montreal, Toronto, Calgary, Edmonton, things are certainly slower than they have been in the past. We are seeing a little bit of volume come back, but there are a lot of the smaller transactions. We're only right now seeing some of our larger clients start to discuss re-entering the marketplace, and that very much is a positive. But overall, in every market, the one consistent thing we've noticed is just the market is slow right now. And I think it's going to remain that way for most of 2020. I think Q4 we'll see a higher volume, but I'm doubtful that we'll see the volume that we saw in 2019. 2021 is teeing up to be a fantastic year. We've secured a lot of mandates across the board, a lot of large mandates as well. I just am doubtful that we'll see those things actually transact in 2020.
Yeah, that's our sense too, Brett. Naturally, one of the things we were talking about, and I think we'll open this up for the conversation is, we're now 4.5 months into this. How we've advised clients has kind of ebbed and flowed as it's gone on. I think certainly in terms of looking at new space, to your point, there's not a ton of requirements in the marketplace right now.
Yeah.
Most people are just trying to, quite frankly, continue to run their businesses effectively with how they can, whether it's from home, whether it's limited amount of people back in the office. I can see you're in the office today. Mike and I were just talking about being in there a few times. It is nice, certainly, to get back into the office and get back into the group. But one of the things I think is really interesting, and I want to open up for the conversation, is just how we're advising clients right now. When this first hit, the initial reaction was either people are going to shrink dramatically or people are going to grow dramatically to then implement social distancing, to implement wider desks. We're not really saying either right now, are we? It's more just let's sit put for now and then turn the gas back on again as we get towards 2021.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right, Matt. A lot of people are evaluating what they're going to do, and that hypothesis of we're going to need to grow to accommodate for the distancing, that doesn't seem to be a relevant factor right now. Most of the clients we're talking to are certainly looking at reducing their footprint right now. We are starting to see some of the subleases that we anticipate come on that are starting to come onto the market. Most of them are somewhere between 5,000 square feet to 20,000 square feet. The thought of abandoning an office space altogether, it's really not realistic. I think for companies that are looking to go to a 100% work from home model, there's another factor that's mainly driving that, and very few are actually looking that far out. I would say we are seeing a lot of good opportunities in the sublease marketplace. So for tenants that want new, well-priced space without spending money on leasehold improvements, it's a great time. However, those transactions haven't happened yet. In the downtown core, based on the knowledge I have, the largest new transaction was with Investors Group for 22,000 square feet in the last 4 months. And that's an extremely small deal to be noted as the largest deal. If we go through the past kind of 24 months, before COVID started, we would have been talking the hundreds of thousands of square feet to be a deal to rank in, the number one spot. So it's a major change on that front as well.
Yeah, certainly. I think the major.
A couple of headlines over the past couple of weeks. One is, Google said today they're not bringing people back to the office till June or July of next year. Then you also had Shopify. They just they did not exercise their option to downsize in their new complex, The Well, which everyone thought, based on them saying publicly they're moving from home, they would then correspondingly reduce their space, which they had the option to and didn't. So curious on your impression of what some of these large tech companies are doing, and if that was a surprise to you that Shopify decided to keep their space instead of shed it.
Based on the headlines, we certainly thought Shopify was probably going to go in a different direction than maintain where they did. So that was a little bit of a surprise. We have to be careful to read between the headlines and the sound bites versus what reality is. And I think it's too early to know what the reality is, other than we've seen a softening of the market. Very few tenants are growing and there's very little activity. If you would have read, Shopify's announcement from a few months ago, you would think the world was falling apart. However, they've proven themselves that they're not necessarily reducing their footprint based on what we've seen at the well. So really, it's just up in the air right now. I'm somewhat hesitant to give, a strong opinion because we just don't know at this point. I look at the tech industry 10 years ago. They pretty much called all their employees back to the office space. They tried a work from home model that was somewhat flexible, and Yahoo, as an example, they called everybody back to the office. Microsoft, for the most part, did as well. So we'll see once we have a vaccine in place what this looks like and what the reality is. I think certain industries are going to be very productive with a flexible program in place. But I think we'll go back to kind of where we were pre-COVID in June or July of next year,
Well,
or vaccine dependent.
Yeah, Brett, to your point, headline versus trend line. Headline is everyone in office leasing is out of a job because no one's going to go back to the office. What we're actually saying in the data is people are encouraged and want to be back to their offices.
Yeah.
Do they want to be back 9 to 5, Monday to Friday like they were before? That's not necessarily what the data is saying. But an overwhelming support. I think the most recent study I saw was 94% of people want to be back in the office eventually. So when you actually look to the data, people do want to be back. Are there changes that are going to happen? Definitely. I think it was time. I think Mike and I have talked about this. I know you're an avid watcher of this podcast, so you've joined in on these conversations. People want to be back. It's just a matter of how we can get them back safely, and more importantly, how the office will change and how culture will come back. Because I think that's the biggest key. We're in the summer now, which is naturally an unproductive time for most offices with vacations, with cottages, with kids off school. September is a really telling time. I think I think the Ontario school announcements coming over the next few weeks, what their plans are, that's going to have a major impact on the office leasing market as we move towards September. If there's no childcare, I don't think we'll see the office leasing market pick up again. Obviously, school being the major childcare supporter for people working in offices. So that's one of the interesting things that I think we're going to see as we move forward. Maybe last question for you, because we do appreciate the time. Just give a little bit on your sense, how you're seeing it. You've been in the office. Mike and I gave a little quick demo, and we are going to give a walkthrough. Just what you've seen being in the office compared to working at home in terms of, are you more productive? Are you, able to have those conversations that you weren't having? Are there distractions that you forgot about, fire alarms perhaps that are going off at any given time? Just walk us through that a little bit.
Like, you're in office. Do you like it? What do you like about it?
Well, as you guys know, I'm a creature of routine. So I like to get up at the same time every day, do the same thing, come into the office. And without that, I personally found it difficult to be as productive as I wanted to. So for the first 2 months of the work from home, we were productive, but it was an adrenaline fueled productivity. And then I could sense the air kind of came out of the basketball, and things kind of slowed down on all fronts, internal discussions, external discussions. And now we're somewhere in between. I will say, from my experience, being back in the office has really picked up productivity. It's very difficult to collaborate. In our industry, collaboration is really key. Mike Senior and I, we went for a lunch at Earl's in the middle of this as soon as we moved into phase 2. And within 15 minutes, we actually had an idea for a client that we wouldn't have come across otherwise. So that, water cooler communication or hallway communication is crucial in our industry. I can't speak for every industry, but our industry, I think being in the office space is extremely important. We've had meetings with clients that were very engineer, heavy. They pretty much stayed in the office the whole way through because our engineers need to collaborate, be together to pass that information. So that's another one that would fall into that category. We're dealing with large international tech companies, and although they've specified Canada as a major growth hub for them, even during this period, they've isolated Toronto as a major growth hub for their engineering. We're still not transacting with them because they actually just don't know when they want to bring people back to the office. They have so much on their plate right now. So like I said, 2021 is going to be, I think, one of the busiest years of our careers. 2020, it's, just staying in touch with our clients, giving them good advice. And, I don't want to say waiting to see what happens because we are going to still do transactions this year, but I just don't see it being the volume that we've seen in previous years.
Yeah, I would echo those sentiments. I think the important thing is, and I think you said it, generally we look to tech to lead the way. They've traditionally led the way in the Toronto marketplace. The banks and the law firms usually come after that and try to react to what tech is doing. And tech is still right now. I don't want to say they've put the brakes on fully. They're just waiting on the sidelines, waiting for the opportunity to jump back over the boards and get going again.
Yeah.
So the conversations are still really active right now. I think we're all on Zoom calls, Teams calls, WebEx calls more than we normally actually would be with our clients, just waiting, putting it in play. But everything's revving up behind the scenes. They are ready to hop back in. It's just the timing. When's that going to be? Is there going to be a vaccine? Do we need a vaccine? How does that look? So I think that'll be a really interesting barometer. I think to your point, Q4, maybe. It'd be nice. I think you'll start to see some tenants start to evaluate by that point. But Q1, Q2, I think we'll really see everything get back. Mind you, when this started in March, I said we'd be back in May. So maybe I'm not the best one to take a bet at that one, but it does seem like that's the sentiment with our clients.
Yeah, I'm with you, Matt. It's impossible to predict when.
Yeah.
Everything, all the data points I see point towards a return. And I think there's going to be a lot of pent-up demand. Leases, the expiry dates don't change. So we see the flurry of activity coming. Right now, it's just really secondary. People are worried about their people and their business. Real estate is far down the pipeline. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, it's been an interesting time to say the least.
Well, thank you, Brett. It's really good insight. That's probably a good time to wrap it up and good.
Absolutely.
Remarks. So we'll keep you posted. Thanks again for watching, and stay tuned for episode 5 coming up in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, we will take you back to the office, as they say. Thanks so much, Mike. Talk to you next week.
See you, Matt.